last session. I think that whole area of how to get financing involved in infrastructure is very interesting and very challenging. So, but what it does also underline, though, I think, is the scale of money that's available to get stuck in there if we can get it right, to get those partnerships right. So, moving on to nearly our second from last session of the day, another panel session where we're going to talk about capacity and capability to innovate and deliver. Where are the near and medium-term innovations in technology and working practices that could improve delivery of this transport strategy? And welcome Neil Gibson. Neil is the immediate past president of ADEPT. Hannah Vickers, welcome Hannah, chief executive of the Association for Consultancy and Engineering. And Alistair Reisner, chief executive of SECA, the Civil Engineering Contractors Association. So we're going to get a perspective, I suppose, from from actually what is actually going to make this delivery happen. So, same as we did earlier, 5 minutes or so just to set the questions. So, Neil, kick us off. Do you want to use the lectern or do you want to be relaxing? You can do whatever you want.
No, lectern.
Yeah, use the lectern. There's a microphone there and everything.
I've been sat down all afternoon.
Neil, the floor is yours.
Okay, first off, thank you for coming back and sticking this afternoon and listening to us. So, does everyone know what ADEPT is? Yeah, okay, so no. Okay, so it's the Association of Directors of Economy, Environment, Planning and Transportation. So we're a self-help group. We're practitioners that run complicated place services in unitary and county councils in England. So every day we do the stuff that you've been talking about all day so far. So with the jam in the sandwich, trying to make things happen. So we cluster together for warmth, and as the immediate past president, my theme last year was innovation, so it seemed appropriate, perhaps, that I was asked to come and reflect some of the ADEPT thinking on it. So I've got 4 bits to my 5 minutes. I want to just talk about why the hell innovate at all? Why bother? What stops innovation happening? I think those 2 first questions are important as to why you would then innovate. How we might change working practices that are one of the breaks around innovation, and then the role that technology can play. Technology is just a tool at the end of the day that can help in the innovation space. So the work that ADEPT has done over the past couple of years has been asking that question, why innovate? And we're quite clear, and here's some of the reasons why from our perspective. Innovation can lead to a better coordination of transport services and make them a great customer service for all. You can be more intelligent in the way that you use data and the utilization of our assets. Real-time data can give you insight that you wouldn't otherwise have. You can make social and economic isolation created by connectivity a thing of the past. You can make a contribution to cleaner growth and hit the 2050 zero carbon target sooner rather than later. You can see increased productivity in our sector in its guises with better value for money and better outcomes. And you can create solutions that create economic wealth and hit the grand challenges in our national industrial strategy. So there's some of the big reasons why we think, not alone, some of the big reasons why we think innovation is the right thing to do. Not to improve a bit of a footpath or a lamppost, but to drive some of those really big outcomes that we try and tackle every day in the day job, in our country, in our place. So, if innovation is desirable and non-negotiable, what's going to stop us innovating? What are the brakes? So we did some work with our commercial partners, Eurovia, Kia, Atkins, EY, WSP, and O2. We brought O2 and EY in as bringers, as it were, into the traditional suspects, just to give us some kind of a bit of horizontal thought about it. And we conclude that innovation is fettered, not slowed down, but fettered by skills. The sector isn't dominated by technologists or data geeks or change agents. Traditional practices, things work well, don't they? So why bother to change? No shared vision, that's come up several times today actually. If there's no shared vision of where we're going to go, then you have no integrated plan to get there. I've done some work recently at national level, more in a minute, with Transport Research Innovation Board, and we sought with the Transport Catapult to find the definition of what great transport integration looks like in the UK at the moment, and we couldn't find it. So we don't have a vision for integrated transport. So how do we know how we're going to innovate to get there, for example? Competition between agencies, between councils, between government agencies, government departments, between commercial players. Competition in part should drive innovation, but that competition is also restricting innovation. Lack of incentivization. We're told by the commercial sector the contracts we issue don't incentivize them to share or to innovate. And it's just not business as usual. When you go into the office, whichever your office is, the first thing you don't do is say, how am I going to innovate today? You just open up the machine, do the emails, crack on with the job, and so on and so forth. So innovation is not business as usual for most organizations, and therefore we don't invest in it, and therefore it doesn't happen as rapid as it should do. So that was our conclusion from a desk study of research, just talking to folk in the sector around the brakes to innovation. The question is, what do you do about it? ADEPT is a small organisation, influential in the localities, but as an association nationally, we're one of many, many organisations, but we have some views on how we might take this forward. In the medium term, we believe a highway sector deal is one tool or method we can use to stimulate a debate in the sector around innovation and change. It's a method used in other sectors to some various degrees of success, but we believe we do need a new business model in the UK, in England in particular, in the highway sector to stimulate that change across what is a multi-billion industry. Our initial conversation with government and representatives of the highway sector suggest it would be welcome. There's an appetite for the debate. We know, that's a royal we're not as productive as we might be. As a consequence, potential social, economic and environmental gains from the multi-billion investment we make every year in our highways are not being achieved. So how do we leave that investment that we make every year in our highways asset, building new and maintaining to achieve broader national and local goals, and how do we innovate to get there? So the government, the commissioners, national, local, must incentivise the sector to innovate, to use technology to drive change and invest in different skills and changing work practices. And in return, the sector must collaborate better together to achieve these goals. Not one can do it without the other. It's a whole system conversation. So where are we? Several roundtables are being organised as we speak. The ADEPT conversation is going to be on the 1st of August. Private sector and associations are organising them too. Not all the associations at this stage, they cannot be representatives. And we hope that by the autumn we have enough appetite and agreement on what scope might be for a conversation with government, and then the true debate with the sector can start in the autumn of this year. And based on past experience, that can be anything from a year to 2 years to have that true conversation and really work out what we need to do and when. But that's the medium term. In the short term, ADEPT is doing a number of things to stimulate innovation in the sector. We have secured £23 million from the DFT to pump prime 8 live labs around England, 2 of which are in this corridor in Buckinghamshire and in central Bedfordshire. So these are quite small scale. It's only 23 million across 8 places. But this is about looking at data, new methods, new materials, technology and so on, and working practice, quite frankly, to stimulate changes in local highways infrastructure. The goal is to test whether these can become business as usual. They're in mobilisation as we speak. It's a 2-year programme. And we have a pool of graduates from our commercial partners, 6 graduates from our commercial partners, who will drive out the cross-learning across these live labs over next year, so please watch this space. Second of the 3 initiatives that we've been involved in this year, getting to grips with data. It's interesting, data's come out quite a lot earlier on today. I'm told data is the new oil. How do we strategically harvest it, that data, and prevent our ADEPT members from buying bespoke local solutions that meet some of their needs on a locality basis? When we're looking at data capture, data analytics, and becoming more intelligent around the use of that data to drive our business, from policy writing to efficiency in operational services. And we have been doing a lot of work and conversations with all the subnational transport boards in England around whether they can adapt their drive towards creating data houses on a sort of subnational level to be a product for which smaller highway authorities might purchase services from. And that's going to our adept leadership team this week as a bit of a think piece. And finally, we sit on the Transport Research Innovation Board. This is a Department for Transport board providing thought leadership and a guiding mind around state investment in research and development. The state, across all its government departments, is not short of £1 billion a year investment in R&D. The question is, where's that investment going into, and is it resulting in real live change on the ground, rather than academic thought and commoditising it? We've agreed 4 substantial themes, has the Transport Research Innovation Board this year. One's around data, health and wellbeing, inclusivity, integrated transport, which is a debt champion, and transport infrastructure. It's hoped that over time the government investment can tilt into these 4 themes, and we move from academic research, which is still needed, into practical application on the ground. And that's going to be the drive over the next 12 months. Finally, from me, I guess, I hope that stimulated some interest around how innovation might play out in the short and medium term, and some questions from the floor. In EH is already playing in some of these short-term things. It can have a key role to play in getting to grips with data and the data platform, the analytics, and it can become a demonstrator for the major themes around R&D in this country around transport and connectivity, if it has a desire to do so. Thank you.
Interesting, we're coming to, I suppose, in this, when local authorities are so challenged financially, do they have the capacity to innovate? We'll get into that a bit later on. Hannah, give us your thoughts from a consultancy point of view. We'll swap.
Thank you. So I have a few slides to run through. I'm just going to start by introducing my organisation, for those of you who don't know. So we're the Association for Consultancy and Engineering. So we are the trade body for all the consultancy and engineering firms. So basically your engineering designers. A number of those are here today, showing off some of their wares as sponsors and things. But that's my background. That's who I'm here representing today. I have got a few slides. I'm the only one that does. I have slides because I'm extremely dyslexic, so they're for my benefit as much as they are for yours. Remind me what to say. So I'm going to cover off some of the trends, some of the shifts that these businesses are seeing and what that means, hopefully, for you as you take this programme forward. So the first one is the consultancy industry itself is actually going through a really fundamental change in what they offer. So up on the screen, you'll see the historically, we have sold our expertise, we've sold our people to be able to design new, the infrastructure, the housing, the systems. Actually now what we're shifting towards is being able to give our people new tools. So we've touched a little bit on data, but also some of the technology solutions, some of the products available to them, actually really sort of fundamentally change what we're able to do and what we're able to offer. So really, if you want to think about the future of consultancy and the future of the businesses, what they're going to be able to offer you is a blended offering of being able to bring together these 3 things rather than just selling you their people. That's quite a fundamental change, so I'm going to explore what that means in just a little bit more detail. So to begin with, having that at our disposal actually changes quite a lot of what we're able to offer to our clients and certainly expands our offering in some areas. So what I've put up on screen now is a bit of a depiction around actually how the markets might change for the consultancy and engineering firms. So you'll see the triangle's meant to represent the process of development for a program down into a project. So I think what I've seen with the strategy that we're looking at the consultation on is that's the start of your vision at a system level. Now really when we move into delivery, you've got to take that down as to what it means for each of the individual networks in terms of how they are interacting with each other, what that means for the assets within those networks, and finally actually which projects do you need to start to implement? How do you make those decisions around the right projects to be able to realise some of those benefits? So what I've sketched out here are the 3 areas where I think the consultancy and engineering firms can really start to help with that. So I think it's great actually that you've started to pull together this vision at a system level, because that really allows you to open up the conversation with the market and bring forth some of their best expertise, their best offering really, to help advise you in that sort of policy and operational space. And being able to develop that and understand and have the conversation at that level, particularly for the engineering consultancy firms, is hugely valuable, recognising that actually that's where you derive all of these benefits. So if you think the cost benefits on the sorts of schemes you'll be looking at will be, 2 to 7 perhaps to 1, making the right decisions up at that level, at that sort of strategic planning and placemaking to invest in the right things will pay dividends when you come down to actually deciding which projects you want to take forward. So I can't emphasize enough how much importance we need to put on spending the time and investing up there. And the sorts of things they can do, you can imagine. I'll just give a couple of examples in terms of the technology. But, in strategic planning and placemaking, actually, now the engineering consultancy firms are able to model all sorts of different master plans for you and the outcomes of those and the traffic flows, and really to a level they were never able to do before they had this sort of technology to work with. And on the other side, actually really sense checking some of the vision in the strategy that you're consulting on around how your existing asset base and networks are performing. So really digging into what the data's telling them around that, and therefore what should be sort of shortlisted as new interventions in the strategy. So the vision for the industry really is to be able to move to a place where they are working more on the sort of policy and operations side and using these new tools and this plethora of customer and asset performance data to help you make better decisions about what it is that you actually need to invest in and understand how you're realising the benefits of that. There will obviously be changes in delivery, but my colleague Alistair's going to probably cover that in a little bit more detail around digitally enabled design and how the construction process would change. But I can't emphasise enough that sort of top half, which, I said you're well on the way to doing, I think, in terms of setting out a sort of system level vision. It's just how you develop that and how you get that alignment down into choosing the right projects is so crucial. So something else that we've started to bring into that conversation, and actually something which industry has not historically been well engaged with, is being able to articulate what they can offer in terms of the outcomes that it delivers. So, earlier today we've had an awful lot of discussion on the outcomes and the benefits to the people, to the residents, of the strategy. But actually understanding and using a structure. So this is something that we've pulled together to start that conversation with the businesses, so that they can take these 5 capitals and actually understand where their expertise sits. So are they absolutely brilliant engineering designers, engineering consultants that are the best in the world at delivering schemes that want just natural capital, so that are really net zero schemes? Or are they the best engineering consultants that are, look well into financial capital, so to deliver you really, really good value for money, super cheap schemes? I think there's to my mind, they're not, historically, they've never been engaged in that sort of a conversation. So this is something that we're starting to move them towards, and I think actually paves the way for a different relationship where what you're approaching the industry with is a clear idea as clients on what it is that you value, and therefore you buy the capability from the industry to deliver on that value, rather than having to go into quite siloed, lowest cost transactional relationships. So this really starts to open up the conversation. So that would be my first sort of suggestion, really. And I think, like I say, with this strategy, you're well on the way to understanding that, and where amongst these 5 capitals the relative benefits are and how important they are. Because I think that doesn't just help you make the right decisions, it actually helps you find the right partners from the supply chain as well. So if I'm just going to finish now on a couple of slides, one on the commercial environment and one on innovation and our capabilities, talking a little bit around how the businesses themselves are evolving. So this slide is a little bit around how the business models change. So if I said to you, you'll see with the blended service offering that I put up initially, actually at the moment, the majority of the engineering consultancy firms are contracted on an hours basis. So you can see straight away the big misnomer there between continuing to contract with them on an hours basis when actually what you're wanting to buy is this blended service offering. So we need to start to unpick that in a little bit more detail. So what you'll see up here is some thinking that we're pulling together around actually how you might change the commercial environment such that if you understand what it is that you value, you can find your way to the right parts of the supply chain to deliver that, the right capabilities. Actually, how do you then run a procurement exercise and contract with those businesses so that you're incentivizing them to deliver that value rather than incentivizing them to sell you a lot of hours because that's what the contract rewards them for doing, bluntly. And you'll see the sort of stack diagram up on the screen there is us starting to explore different business models around that commercial relationship between the clients and the private sector to look at different ways of incentivizing them. So incentivizing them and rewarding them for delivering your value rather than paying them for an input. Effectively is probably the summary of the transformation that we need to go through. And like I said, some of those there are different models that we can apply to help you at different levels with that. What I would say is there's something here between myself and Alistair that we can offer. So clearly this is a new area for the industry, starting to want to shift how it's positioning itself, shift to a more positive value-based relationship with our clients. Actually, there is something that, a big role for us as trade associations to help advise clients and guide you through that process. So that would certainly be an offer that we would make, I think, as the strategy continues to develop, because we've seen from some of the sort of big failures of large infrastructure projects, particularly recently, actually the impact of that breakdown in communication and positive relations between clients and industry and the result of that. So I think the offer is there from us in terms of market sounding and actually helping to develop that, helping you to work towards getting the right capability out of industry and incentivizing it and contracting with it in a way that means that you're going to sort of all be working collectively towards the outcomes. So finally, I just wanted to finish on some of the changes in our skills and our capability and what they mean. So again, I'm looking at this sort of blended service offering. Very much interested in data. I've slight disagreement with Neil on data is going to be the new oil. I don't think actually the valuable data is going to be owned. I think most of that, if you think about it, is kind of user data, is asset performance data, is probably going to be publicly available. So although I think it's going to be very valuable, I don't think that anybody will be owning it and holding it and not sharing it. Our expertise, it's going to need a different skills blend if we are to deliver this sort of 3 service offering than just providing traditional engineers doing traditional tasks. It also picks up some of the business-to-business relationships, which I think is particularly interesting here, knowing that actually you're about to embark on this really ambitious program and you are home to so much really interesting, innovative small businesses that may want to start to partner with some of the more traditional engineering consultancy firms to get involved and innovate and use, almost using the program as an incubator to test some of their innovations. I think that actually could be really interesting. So there's something to think about there with how those business-to-business relationships could be incentivized and actually, beyond the lifetime of the program, the sort of longer-term economic benefits of that could be huge. And that links through really to the technology and the products that we need to invest in. There will be new entrants into our industry. And really what you've got here, getting this large program off the ground is a sort of purpose-built, I suppose, test bed for some of those, which, like I say, could then be scaled up across the country and internationally, bringing wider benefits back to the regions. So lots of things to think about. We're very happy to take those forward with you. I think there's a lot more work to do, but actually having that vision at that strategy level certainly is a really, really good starting point. So well done for getting that far. Thank you.
Later on, or sit wherever you like, yeah. Alistair Riser, Chief Exec of Seeker.
Hi there, everyone. First and foremost, just as everyone else, I'll do a quick explanation of who we are. You will be agog to find out that the Civil Engineering Contractors Association is an association for civil engineering contractors. What that means in practical terms is around 300 members around the country, of which 80, I did the sums last night, 80 operate in England's economic heartland. That includes some big names, some of whom you've seen on the screen, so Skanska, Volker Vessels, Kia, Hochtief and Amy, all headquartered in this region. We estimate, I did again, back at the fag packet sums, about 80% of every pound that's spent on infrastructure construction in this region is spent through our members. So we've got a really big interest in what you've been talking about today. I've been asked to talk about 2 things. One, capacity of the sector, and the second one is capability. Well, the capacity question is really easy for me. The infrastructure sector is incredibly flexible to meet demand. I know that because I've been at Sika for 11 years. In that period, I've experienced a year where our market collapsed by 20% in 1 year. I've also been in the industry at the same period when it's risen by 21%. Both times, industry has sailed on through. It's not been an easy journey, but it has always responded to the demand that's out there. So from a capacity point of view, we can respond to demand as it comes on. However, what we really welcome in order to respond to that demand is visibility. That's why we really love stuff like this. It gives us the ability to understand a bit of what the future looks like. So we can track that, we can invest in recruitment, we can invest in skills, we can invest in technologies to make sure we're ready to deliver outstanding results for our customers. But that's what the easy bit, the capacity stuff. What I'm really here to talk to you about is capability, because that's where, as you've heard from Hannah already, that's where our world is changing really quickly. We're looking at the future of what we'll call delivery, not contracting, because frankly, part of the issue is contracting as a business model may not be all of the future of our industry. It's all about delivering outcomes for our customers. And we're seeing some big changes in the technologies that we use to deliver those customers. If I look back to when I started at my organization, if you talked about drones, that was military capability around the world, delivering payloads. Actually, for us now, drones are just a key part of the delivery solution on site, doing surveying, providing data about the stuff that we're building. Augmented and mixed reality. 3-4 years ago, that was Pokemon Go, my son wandering around the streets of our local town. Now it's a key part of what we're offering in terms of visibility of what we're delivering and also detecting where there might be challenges before you even get to site. Off-site manufacture. There's a big focus from the UK government on this, and we're expecting significant shifts in that world, taking work off-site and into a factory, and what that means for the delivery model for contractors. Artificial intelligence and machine learning. Again, it's only a few years ago that Watson was winning Jeopardy over in the United States of America. Now it's being incorporated into the way that we're designing schemes. Some of the stuff that Hannah's talking about the way that assets are being designed. It's not by the human brain, it's by a machine that's learned by process to actually deliver outcomes that meet the demands of our customers. That's a really big part of our future. Robotics and automated vehicles. We're now starting to see these things rolling out live that have no operator in the vehicle because they're able to do the operation of plant. Again, a fundamental change to the way that we do our business. So I think you're probably feeling that I'm talking about technology being the thing that's going to change our industry. But for me, actually, I don't think that's the case at all. I think if we look to the short to the medium term, the fundamental change in our business isn't going to be about the technology that you use. It's going to be about how we all work together. I say that because we are seeing vastly different delivery models come through for our sector, away from the traditional adversarial contractual relationship between our client and for us, the client, the contractor, but also with the consultant, and towards much more of a world where there is a partnership, where all of those organizations are working together, perhaps even as a single enterprise, to deliver those outstanding outcomes. It can only happen if there's a real desire on all parties to do so, but that unlocks things like the off-site manufacture we talked about earlier. You can have a platform-based approach to developing assets with machine learning optimizing the design, and then a kit of parts that pulls together, and then a world-class assembly capability that puts that all together on site. That's miles away from where we've been historically, but it's not some fantastic future that's never going to happen. It's pretty near term some of these things can happen. So we're also, interestingly, our previous presentation, talking about pensions and the ability to bring money in. We were talking largely about housing, but also infrastructure. I think that's going to be one of the big parts of our industry going forward, is unlocking pensions money coming into industry. And that's probably going to, PFI is very much out of flavour, but new forms of public-private partnership with pension investment coming in, I think is going to be a big part. I've just had a call from one of my colleagues today about a conversation they've been having in Westminster about exactly that point, about bringing that increasing funding in. So yes, that I think is probably as much as I can say now, because I'm probably just come over my time slot, but hopefully we can pick up some of the issues in the questions now. Anthony.
Round of applause, Alistair. Thank you very much. Take a pew. I'm going to go right back to where I started with Neil. And local authorities are really challenged financially. We have got we still therefore have a real focus on capital costs, controlling the cost of things. How can we move the thinking towards whole life outcomes and make space to invest in innovative ideas? Is that still the big challenge? Just speak it.
Okay. Yeah, it's true to say that councils are, on my side of the business, are seeing investment going primarily, I think the point was made earlier on, into social care services in terms of the slice the pie. But that's a wartime spirit, in my view, so therefore that should drive innovation to drive increased VFM, value for money, productivity out of the money you've got. So as the money gets tighter, we should all become more entrepreneurial, not doing the way we've always done things and get less done for the old methods. So I guess the challenge to the sector is, why aren't we innovating every day? Why aren't we partnering every day? Why aren't we off-site manufacturing every day? So I was just listening to your contribution. My office happens to be based in Aylesbury. We're building thousands of houses a year. I don't see much off-site manufacturing going on there. It still looks like pretty much like traditional build at the moment. We're still laying tarmac, concrete curbs down on streets. Doesn't feel like off-street manufacture of footpaths and infrastructure.
Well, similarly, this blended service offer that Hannah talks about, you're still looking for people to be giving you the lowest price.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes we go for the lowest price, but sometimes we go for the best price and the best service offer. You don't get into bed on our energy waste plant. It's a 30-year deal. We've gone with our particular provider because it was the best commercial model, delivering the best return on investment. And we had our annual report today, and they're delivering great social and economic benefits on the back of it as a provider. And they're innovating. Our highways contract was a 7 + 8, 15 years, because you want a long-term relationship with a commercial organisation who will innovate with you and change and invest and be entrepreneurial in the way as the money gets tight.
Hannah, that word relationship there comes into it. It's surely the key, because I'm struggling to see, well, what is a modern consultancy or contracting businesses? What gives it its competitive edge nowadays? Because you talk about the blended service model, but ultimately, it is about what kind of price they can offer, isn't it?
That is currently, but I don't think that will be the case. And actually, that's one of the biggest blockers to innovation, because you can imagine if you're recouping your return on investment on an hours basis, actually, how on earth do you then make any money back?
That's where I'm going. Yeah, obviously, when you are stuck in this model, then these fantastic innovative ideas become so difficult to deliver. How do we break out of that cycle? Because the reality is we're still in it. Your blended model is nice, but we're still in the old model.
Well, not exclusively. And we're starting to see that. We're starting to see some of the partnerships coming together that are more alliance-based, that actually are more based on rewarding all parties, be it public sector or private sector, on the outcomes that the programme delivers. So we're starting to see some of those, really working very well through some of the water companies and things. And I think there is a sort of a scale that, actually not everything should be delivered by a fully integrated alliance. But there are some quite simple things that you can do to help improve the incentivisation and reward for, the performance of the asset that's being created, rather than just creating an asset. So, there are some really, really simple things that can be put in place, actually, that, aren't going to change the world, but they are going to at least start to change that relationship and really underline, the fact that actually you want to be collaborative, you're interested in the outcomes, you're not interested in transferring, all of the risk to the private sector and expecting them to manage that. I think there are some really, so that doesn't have to be.
No, but and I suppose, well, what is the first one then? Give us the most important one of those small things you can do.
So even at a basic level, so you have to think about who the asset owner is. But if we take the most sort of short term, perhaps a housing developer, for example, who may be just wanting to take a site on, flip it,
sell it, get out and get their profit. You think, well, they're not going to have any long-term incentive. They're probably not going to have any performance incentive themselves for how those houses perform. You may be able to influence them through the planning process. But actually, even if that is their mindset and you get to the stage where actually that's what they want to deliver, within their contract with their engineering designers, they can introduce a performance metric that is actually about something that matters to them. Now, that might be around something that they've been incentivized on through the planning process, like creating homes that are BREEAM rated at a higher standard. So not just saying, deliver us a design, but deliver us a design, and actually we will pay you an additional 1%, 2% fee based on how far up the BREEAM rating these houses pop out at the end of the assessment. Those sorts of things are really simple, but actually fundamentally start to change the relationship and start to change actually what you're incentivizing.
But it requires buy-in on both sides of the contract. Alistair, how do you see it in the contractual world? Because you do have the situation where there are lots of ideas in the construction sector to make things more efficient, make things safer, and they're increasingly expected to be at the contractor's cost.
Well, it's an interesting point, because I think if you'd asked me that question about a year ago, I would have given you my off-pat answer, which is, we're the contractors, we're not fast-moving consumer goods, we can't tell the customer what to buy. As long as the customer comes forward with, we want to do the innovative stuff, we'll sell it to them. But I actually think we're moving on that. I actually think, and it goes to what Hannah was talking about that ability to have early market engagement with customers. I think we can start to have the conversation about, we can deliver extraordinary value. And there'll be some people who are quite suspicious of that in the room, but genuinely, there's this value gap that is growing because of what technology can allow us to do versus what we're able to sell at the moment. And we're now able to have that early conversation to say, here's some of the good stuff. And it's not, here's what we want to sell you. It's about, if we are aligned in terms of the incentives, where we win and you win, if we deliver better value, why don't we go looking for that value together? And I think there's a massive, massive opportunity to strip out enormous amounts of cost from what we're doing, because we have that early conversation, and we go share on a shared basis to say, where can we really drive the cost out? Where can we really drive the value up?
So it's about building that relationship so that the clients understand that language that's being talked to, understand the offer that's being made.
Yeah, I think also on that, it's all well and good saying that, but if government policy doesn't allow some of our clients to do some of this stuff, if Treasury rules say, sorry, no, it won't happen. So we've also got that responsibility to have the conversation.
CapEx is CapEx, OpEx is OpEx, etc., etc. Other questions? We've got loads of microphones floating around, so make me aware of any questions you've got coming through here. I mean, there is one on Slido, Neil, that I've flagged up with you there, which basically said that, I was going to say words to the effect of it. It said, why is it so many organisations are actually, they're set up in a way which actually makes it hard. How do you foster innovation in organisations that almost seem to be set up to squash innovation?
Agreed. So I think I've got some colleagues in the room. I'm a rule breaker. So I get very frustrated with red tape in my organisation and in the system. So part of my daily job is to try and unwind rules that can be unwound. Many are there for good reason, to protect people, protect public money, so they're good rules. Many of the rules are invented by people in the system. They call them policies, what do they call them? When you really scratch the surface, the rules we make for ourselves that are based in history, wipe them away. And that's what I was saying the other one about the things like the housing, the sector deal. The whole system has got some structural flaws in it. On the commissioning side too, I was interested in Alistair's view. I agree. I think many commissioners, perhaps I'm going to be controversial here, I don't know, people in the room, we are not capable of commissioning really innovative solutions because that's not how we're built. We don't have the rule breakers, the technologists, the change agents in engineering departments, in planning departments, economic departments, and so on. There are some, for sure, but as a sector, we're not. If the commercial sector are waiting for us to spec it, they'll wait forever, quite frankly. Part of your duty is to come back to us and suggest to us where we might innovate. So it's a two-way process, even in traditional procurement models.
So I mean, I'm regularly in meetings where people are saying Google, Amazon, etc., are going to be eating the consultancy's lunch because they're not disruptive enough. How does the consultancy business accelerate towards this blended model by being more disruptive, breaking those rules? Does it need new skills?
Well, so there's a skills piece on this, but fundamentally it's that shift in the business model and actually getting them to recognise that and everything that goes with it. So as much as, within government you've got the policies and the rules, you have all of that in industry as well. We have all of the lawyers that write our contracts, we have all of our professional indemnity insurers who, we're going to have to take on that journey of being a different business, delivering a different service. So that sort of thing is where I think organisations like mine and Alistair can really help with some of the big enablers. But the biggest part actually is for them to set it out. And I think there is very much this piece now to go back and show the clients, this is what we could do for you. And it's all about trying to get in for that conversation at the right time, really to be able to show the client, you're thinking about things, you are thinking exactly as you've been today with the strategy, you're thinking about the vision. Okay, now we're getting a handle on what outcomes you want to see. Brilliant. Okay, that gives us some food for thought on how can we best help you deliver those outcomes. So I think that, really is actually important that we don't then jump straight from that down into, and here is a procurement exercise to buy an input. There's a bit that happens in the middle, which is actually really, really important and doesn't cost anything to have that conversation.
So comment on the slide, it says too much reliance on business case studies can kill innovation.
I think, and this is somebody who used to review business cases for the Treasury, which I think there's definitely something around trying to articulate, and I will honestly say managing our politicians around outcomes. So I used to work for George Osborne, and you can imagine what that was like, wanting to try to engage him in a conversation about the outcomes that a scheme might deliver before he goes out and announces what it is and how many people are going to get on it, and it's called High Speed 2 and it's not about high speed. All of that is actually really, really important. So I think there is a big piece there around putting some boundaries on what the assurance processes expect when you go through these business cases. Yeah. Actually, what you need is outcomes before you get into a conversation about exactly what it is, how shiny it is, and how many people are going to go on it.
Because I imagine someone like Martin would say that everybody in this room is a consultant will tell you they have the answer to his problem. I suppose, what makes one of them better than the other? Surely it's about outcomes, it's about relationships.
Well, and it's about that knowing what outcomes you value. So I put up that 5 capitals model. Actually, what's really important, for each commercial arrangement is actually understanding the relative values of those. And in doing that, you're able to buy the right capability. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to buy someone to deliver you the best environmental scheme that is really focused with their business strategy around delivering lowest cost. So I think that's the shift really, is understanding those outcomes. And then actually, as far as the commercial relationships go, engaging in a conversation around the risks and opportunities in delivering those outcomes and sort of letting the commercial procurement process follow on from that rather than having each step divorced. So having the most brilliant vision, but then handing it to procurement who procure something entirely different.
Okay. Alistair, well, there's a question here saying, a comment, outsourcing jobs is diminishing the skills, capabilities and innovation in UK-based companies and employees. How can the industry adapt to this? Subcontracting everything?
And not only companies, in local authorities as well. I mean, there is this big challenge about consistent skills within organisations and learning that goes on from project to project. I think some of the stuff that we've been talking about today is how you almost create that longevity of knowledge within an enterprise, where if you're trying to deliver some outcomes, some brilliant things for your customers, wouldn't it be better if you had the people who delivered those outcomes before and knew how to do it, rather than pitching out to the market every single time on a chop it up into thousands of little consultancy contracts. Sorry, Hannah. But I think there's a much better way of doing this, and it involves Hannah's members, our members, the clients in the industry, bringing those teams together for long-term driving of value.
I'm being given, I think we're right over time, aren't we? So we need to wrap up. Where's Paul? Yes, we need to wrap up. So can we just wrap things up just by saying, well, here we are with the English Economic Heartland team and their supply chain. What does this group of people need to do to try to stimulate more innovation and more greater capability in the market?
Okay, so here's one easy idea for me. We know in English Economic Heartland some of the major highways maintenance suppliers are probably in the room. Kia, Skanska, Eurovia, Ringway Jacobs probably dominate 80% of highways maintenance. They're already working together. Steve Kent in the room, working with them. What innovative thing, what new thing are they going to do for their clients in England's economic heartland tomorrow as a consequence of the debate today?
Okay. Alistair?
So the one bit of innovation that I don't want to see is the reinvention of the wheel. You know, there's loads of good stuff going on out there. Be part of that good stuff. Don't think we've got to do something differently ourselves to show how innovative we are. Tap into that great resource that's out there. Work with us, because we're engaged in those conversations as well. And be part of a really exciting change.
What, you mean collaborate?
It has, I've heard it said, yes.
Okay. Hannah?
I'd say know what it is you value and then go out and buy the outcomes and the outputs that deliver that. Don't buy the inputs.
Right, thank you very much. Sorry, it's a rapid panel session there, but I hope you found that of a useful insight into what the challenges are around bringing innovation and capacity into the market. Hannah, Neil, and Alistair, a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.